It's time for Dart Talk. Brought to you by thedartzone.com. Stay in the zone. Thedartzone.com is an official Cosmo distributor and Windy City Fabricators, America's premier fabricators of orthotics and prosthetics. And Redwood Darts, America's newest tungsten darts. Stand straight and tall and hit them all. Redwood Darts. And now, here are your hosts, Mystery Mark and Steve P.
Okay, welcome to Dirt Talk.
Welcome.
Yet another episode.
Yes, it is.
October
23rd.
2012. Steve Penuncielman with Mystery Mark.
Hello.
How you doing?
Fine. Yourself?
I'm good.
You're good. Are you sure about that?
I don't know how many people were actually, watching old episodes of Dirt Talk last night, but I have a feeling not too many.
Just you?
No, I was watching the Bear game.
Oh, okay.
I had the Bear game on the TV. I had the baseball game on the AM radio. And then I was DVRing the debate. And then on the computer, I had an online stream of a soft tip tournament in Kansas City.
Really?
We'll talk about it. I mean, I don't...
You had a lot going on then.
Well, I'll tell you, there were two big tournaments last weekend, right? You had... three, counting the soft tip one, which was pretty big money. But the Witch City Open is back for the first time in, 10 years or something.
Right.
The Minuteman Dart League put it on. They're the biggest steel tip dart league in America, thousands of players. And I don't know why they went away, but they came back apparently with a vengeance. I talked to a couple of people that attended the tournament.
Yeah,
real positive reviews. And off the record, they were positive, which is nice.
Right.
Right. Also, there was a charity tournament outside of Cleveland, in Warren, Ohio, that I tried to get results for. I'll get them next week. I couldn't get them in time. So, and then the results for this soft tip thing. I mean, they've been playing for days, and I think they had the final today, which strikes me as something odd.
Why is that?
Well, you're going to have a tournament, and then the final's going to be on Tuesday. So what, are you going to take, 4 days off?
Right.
These soft tip tournaments that go on and on for days, I wish we had a steel tournament that was like that, but I'm wondering if anybody would come.
Right.
Right? The Canadian Nationals run for a week, and they have team events like the provincial teams.
Yeah.
And then they also have singles and doubles and whatnot, and that runs for 8 days or something. So you literally have to start on Monday, I think, Monday or Tuesday. So you got to take that whole week off because you got to travel. And then you play all the way through the weekend. And I always thought if we had national championships in America, that would be the way to do it. Right? Get 1 week toward the end of the year, have, whatever team event you want to have a doubles, have have a couple of singles,
right.
Have a couple of, have a cricket, have a 5-0, have another 5-0, have another 5-0. I mean, I don't know. There's got to be a way to do it to make it worth everybody's while, but I mean...
Why don't they start the tournament in the beginning of the week and end on Sunday?
I don't know. I don't know how this soft tip tournament.
Unless it gives the people that lose, they don't have to take the Monday and Tuesday off.
That's probably what happened. Was they ran qualifiers for the singles over the weekend,
right.
and then if you didn't qualify, you would leave. I guess.
Yeah.
Except that don't you have to block out the time, assuming you're going to get through? Because
right.
It wasn't just two people playing today. There's 8, 10 people, whatever, and then they also had events yesterday. So I'm not really sure these really long tournament formats, how that's supposed to work for everybody.
Right.
However, I do know this.
What do you know?
We are brought to you by the Dart Zone.
Stay in the zone.
TheDartZone.com is an official Cosmo distributor. Also, thanks Windy City Fabricators and Redwood Darts. Just an FYI for our loyal tribe, our loyal listeners. I was messing around today trying to get us up on Justin TV because I cannot seem to do anything about the lag that we're getting that we never used to get.
Right.
And it looks to me like it only started occurring a couple of weeks ago, and to get the software that they have that automatically gets rid of the lags, like $500.
Really?
And I'm like, okay, well, how about I just go to Justin TV or something? So you checked out live stream; they had a lag too.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not sure really, what we can do about it. So, but it's possible we'll be switching to Justin TV, which people who like to be in the chat room might find that better. For some reason, their chat runs better.
Really?
Than Ustream does. So, in the future, we might be looking at that. Also, I did post that we're going to have a call for candidates today. We should probably start with that. And we're going to start talking about cricket, which I just get tired all over just thinking about
cricket.
Because every time I try to explain concepts to people, it's just like killing me.
You're willing to talk about it, but then when the subject comes up, you don't want to talk about it.
No. It's not that I don't want to talk about it. It's that it's going to be a long, involved conversation, and it's going to take more than one episode and all this other stuff. So we can get it started, when we take care of all the business and everything. It's just sort of like, I can't say I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I think people will
You'll get involved.
I think the listeners will like it better than me. I will, espouse and wax philosophical about the principles of hypermodern cricket, and people can take it for what it's worth.
Do we have an update on the cutting of your hair?
No, we do not.
Why not?
Well, because I took a vacation from darts. Literally, I couldn't find my phone Friday.
Yeah.
And I didn't even look for it. I was like, because 95% of the phone calls I get are from darters and about darts. And I just, at some point after last week, when I got back from Dayton, I was officially darted out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't even want to look at a dartboard. And
you put a painting over the one in your apartment? So you didn't have to look at it?
No, and I did, I did monkey around, and I did go throw and, stuff like that. But, it was strictly for fun.
Yeah.
Which I don't get much of. And, now I'm playing for fun, and, I'm playing some guy, and he's trying really hard to beat me. And I'm like, oh, God, now I have to try. And so we're playing 0-1, alternate start, and, he got the throw in the last leg. I missed some doubles, so it's 2-2. We're playing best of 5, and I'm like, all right, ton 40. I'm like, okay, great. Then the guy's like, hey, you guys got to stop. Bar's closing. And I'm like, what? I'm like, if I was on 204 and he was on 386, you wouldn't be if he was on 204 and I was on 386, I'm pretty sure you'd let this leg finish, right? But because I'm ahead, you're shutting the bar down.
They'd give you 5 more minutes, right?
Give me a break. The stuff I go through. And then
it's excruciating, I'm sure.
Well, you should come out Sunday. Sunday we have this this city team thing, the North Side South Side Challenge, which used to be fun. I mean, I don't remember if I played it last year or not. I mean, it's sort of
I went with you a couple years ago.
Did you? They have a team thing. It's not the South Side Cup. It's different. They have a team thing. They have a team thing like the South Side and the North Side will get a brass team together, and they'll play like a normal league match, like a 9-point league match.
Really?
And then the nickel players will play, and the women will play, and then the, Tungsten Masters, whatever they're calling it, since apparently there's no distinction anymore, right?
Yeah,
they're just sort of
together.
like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
They ran out of Masters players, so let's make everybody Masters or demote the Masters people to Tungsten. I don't know what the logic is there. So I'm going to play that on Sunday, and I was trying to explain it to somebody, and I was thinking back that because we were talking about audience stuff last week.
Is it on the north side one year and the south side the other year?
Well, yeah, and when it's on the south side, I mean, those people, they'll scream and yell during a match, and it's the most fun you can have playing a match. But it's going to be on the north side, so I'm thinking, it's going to be Deadsville.
It'll be boring.
Yeah, it's going to be Deadsville. But, you get, 40, 50 darters together on a Sunday, and the Bears are playing. And it's like, I actually got to sit down and watch a game last night, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the way they started out with the safeties, 18. Okay, this is a show about darts. But I pay attention to safety play because I played safety.
Right.
And I used to get mocked by my dad because he'd be like, oh, well, all you do is go down and make sure the guy doesn't get up when the other guys tackle him, right? But I was, like a center fielder. A lot of interceptions. The safeties were 18 yards deep.
I know they were.
It was insane. I'm like, and you know what they're going to do? They're daring the guy to catch one in the middle because they are going to absolutely hammer him. That was their deal.
That's why Calvin Johnson dropped that one ball.
Because he was going to get absolutely decapitated.
Yeah.
Right. So good safety play. I mean, when Doug Plank and Gary Fensick were back there,
right,
nobody would dare. They'd throw it on the ground, and you try to dive and catch it.
Yeah.
End up with a lacerated kidney because they'd hit you anyway.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Back then they speared.
I almost had a heart attack.
Uh-oh.
When Cutler stayed down.
Well, I think the whole city of Chicago did. Yeah, everybody thought that was bad. So
why are we talking about football?
I don't know. You brought it up.
Let's get to this.
Enjoyed the fact that you actually got to watch a game. So what did you watch more of, the Bears or the?
I watched the entire Bear game, and I had the baseball on the radio.
I mean, glanced over the darts every now and then.
Yeah, kind of, because it was like they had amateurs playing in the losers bracket and stuff, and I'm looking at this. It was kind of hard to see. The feed was a little washed out, but you could kind of see, they had the machine, the board with the score superimposed on one side, so you could actually follow what they were hitting, and then the other camera, you were looking at the player from maybe mid-waist up.
Yeah.
And if they weren't too tall and their arms weren't too long, you could pretty much see their whole arm. Yeah, but it was. I don't know. I don't really want to. It was, for the people that were there. I think it was a great tournament. It was huge money, and they had a sponsor and everything. But it wasn't open to everybody. It's kind of like if you play in a certain league, then you get in the tournament, and it's kind of like, well, it's great for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're not going to be like, I didn't see a high level of darts or anything. I mean, I saw what I saw.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, let's get the disclaimer out of the way. We'll use the one from last week.
I'm not familiar precisely with exactly what I said, but I stand by what I said, whatever it was.
Okay, obviously. I'm not political.
No,
you know that.
Not at
all.
But
I believe that should we endorse a candidate next week? Do an official show endorsement of a candidate?
If you want to. Doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
Well, we can't endorse Sonia Henney because she's dead.
Okay.
Okay, so, I mean, should we endorse, one of the two major candidates, or should we endorse somebody that,
that nobody cares about?
Yeah, I don't know.
I was think about that.
Well, I was thinking about it because, everybody posts all this stuff, and it's pretty obvious where some people stand. And I pretty much take issue.
Is there a candidate that has a stance on darts that we would back for those
what?
reasons?
You know what I should do is I should call the campaign headquarters of each of Obama and Romney and see if they'll support and get a statement from them.
Okay.
That would be frickin' hilarious. But I think they'd blow us off because we're a national show and they only care about, 7 states or whatever, right? They don't care. Obama doesn't campaign in Illinois.
Well, no, he doesn't have to.
Well, what's Romney's home state?
I have no idea, actually.
Okay. It's possible that he could lose 3 home states. I mean, I don't know how many he's got, but because he owns homes in California. He ain't going to win there. I think he's behind in Michigan and Massachusetts. So unless he wins New Hampshire, he's going to lose his 4 home states. I mean, that's got to be some sort of record. I don't know.
We'll have to look that up.
I don't know. I'm not political. I just kind of wondered.
Pay attention to it.
Well, it's part of the show. Yeah. Should we have an official position? Because we do have a call for candidates for this year's most outstanding player and newcomer of the year.
Okay.
Right. We gave out awards last year. Most outstanding player was somebody who you factored in how they did in doubles and stuff.
Right.
Right. And then newcomer of the year was, whoever was new on the scene that tore it up the best. Right. Yeah. So last year we nominated Weeble and Joe Huffman and gave it to Joe Huffman for newcomer of the year. And they both had really good years. And then most outstanding last year, I think, was Paula Murphy and Bob Seneve. I mean, I hope Bob's doing good. He was ill. And I know Paula's having a great year. And then what was the other one? It was player of the year. And Player of the Year is basically based on singles results.
Right.
So right now I'd have to say it's down to like 3 people on the men's side and 2, 3, maybe 4 women.
So are we asking for?
Well, we'll figure out Player of the Year, right? Because that's pretty simple. But for most outstanding player, you factor in things like how they do in doubles, how well they represent the sport, and stuff like that. So it's a little more of an all-inclusive, combination. Great player and Mr. Congenie or Mrs. Congeniality, right? Whatever. And then the Newcomer of the Year is basically who's new.
And how they do.
And how they do.
Yeah.
Right. So all you listeners out there, email your nominations to darttalk@gmail.com, or you could post it on our Facebook page. If you, for some reason, can't post on the Facebook page, send an email or shoot me a text message or something, and your opinions will be considered.
Right.
No, I'm laughing because I believe there's one listener that cannot post on the Facebook page, and I don't know how to reverse that.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to look and see. I'm sure that you got to click here, click there, whatever. Let's take our first break, and when we get back, we'll talk about the Which City Open. Okay,
Sounds good.
You're listening to Dart Talk. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back.
Yes, we are.
Brought to you by the Dart Zone.
Stay in the zone.
TheDartZone.com is an official Cosmo distributor. Also, thanks Windy City Fabricators and Redwood Darts. Looking in the chat room, somebody posted that Obama put darts on the Presidential
Physical Fitness Award.
I'll have to get more details about that. That strikes me as a good reason to endorse it.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not political. So I'm not going to go into any of the other stuff.
Right.
But, it seems to me that if you're pro-darts, then we should endorse you just because of that.
Exactly.
As long as you're not, whatever. I don't care. Politics bores me.
As long as you don't play cricket? Is that what you're going to say?
Now, that would be interesting. If Romney put an award out there but said it was only for 501 and Obama said 501 in cricket, I wouldn't know what to do.
Right.
You'd
be torn.
Yeah, I'd be torn.
You'd have to debate that one for a little bit. You wouldn't make a decision right away.
Anybody who wants to debate me about cricket, I almost invited someone in the studio here just because I thought it'd be funny. So maybe we'll get him in here next week. There are some people that really like cricket and seem to think cricket is a superior game. So we need to disabuse them of those notions, and it's difficult.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a hard one.
All right.
So I used to like playing cricket. I used to like cricket more than 01. I don't know when that stopped, but So, did you have a question about the awards?
Well, I was just going to ask you. So, what are your front runners right now for Player of the Year?
Well,
and I mean, how much long? When does it all end?
It ends December 31st.
Okay.
So there are actually a couple of tournaments left that are going to be...
Where things can change?
Well, because, Seacoast is in Maine somewhere. And I believe that's the second weekend in November. That's a big tournament. It's their 25th anniversary, so they upped the prize money to like $25,000. So that's a big tournament. The Choo Choo Classic, which used to be literally where they had the Chattanooga Choo Choo.
Okay. Right.
You got the song running through your head?
Yes.
They moved the venue, but they upped the prize money, and so that's, I think, the second weekend in November. Myrtle Beach is this weekend. They upped the prize money for that, so that's over $15,000 now. So there's still some people to make a move. The last I looked, I think Paula Murphy was leading for the women. It was Paula, Stacy, Trish Grezik, and Shay Reynolds.
All right.
were the top four women. And for the men, there's only three that are really... There's Darren Young, there's Larry Butler, and Tom Sawyer. And I haven't looked in the last 6 weeks, but I think... was Darren just ahead of Tom and Larry was third?
I actually don't remember.
I
think you're right on that, though.
Yeah, I mean, because we weight tournaments differently. We look at strength of field and stuff like that,
right.
and you don't really get credit for attendance from the show.
Exactly.
From the show, it's pretty much what'd you win and how big was it and how often did you win. So I think Larry made the final of the NWDS.
Yeah.
That was worth
That's
something.
big.
Yeah, I gotta put points on that because it was round robin.
Right.
And then Darren was top 8, but then Sawyer also got a top 4 in Darts Live, and I didn't know what to do about that because
Well, it all factor into the whole.
Yeah, we'll have to
body
see.
of
I mean,
work
it's
for
gonna
the
the men's award is gonna be closer than last year. The women's award is gonna be closer than last year, so that'll be cool. The most outstanding player, I think we need to have somebody new every year, and obviously the newcomer of the year can't repeat.
Right.
So you guys get your nominations in on that. I don't know who's leading newcomer of the year. I mean, that's sort of like I'm going to have to really look at that.
Good.
Yeah, we'll
Do
need
some research.
give us
You
some
have to
nominations
do
on that,
some
everybody,
research
if you
and-
can.
yeah.
We could sure use them. Let's go over which city. I talked to a couple of people about the tournament. I really wanted to go. I couldn't make it. But
you were on vacation.
well, every now and then people will ask me,
Right.
vacation.
Yeah.
I literally didn't know what to do with myself. I was sort of like just looking around like, what do you do when you're not playing darts? Oh, but I started a book.
Oh, really?
I started reading a book on darts. I started reading Bellies and Bullseyes or something. It's Sid Waddell, the guy, the English announcer who's been the voice of darts in England for decades. Passed away this year. I think it was called Bullseyes and Bellies or something.
Yeah.
And
Get the gist.
it starts out with the very first time they televised darts on TV and in the early 70s and stuff like that. And it kind of like how things have evolved into where they are now. And I've only gotten about 40, 50 pages into it. But
is it humorous?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. I mean, it's a chatty kind of a read.
Yeah.
I mean, he uses a lot of phrases and words that we don't use because they don't speak English in England apparently. Right. But outside of that, it was all right. I mean, it was entertaining. It's just sort of like you're going to take a dart vacation and read a book on darts. I mean, how demented am I, honestly? I gave some dart lessons too. What was it? Friday night, I think I went out.
Really?
Friday night late, and these guys are like. I'm like, hey, listen to the show. You get a lot of tips on the show, right? We need to come up with like cards that I can hand out. Like, here's where you find the show.
Oh,
because there's still people emailing me.
Business
Hey,
cards.
where do we get old episodes and stuff like that? So just a reminder, you guys on YouTube, we have our own YouTube channel,
Right.
where we have practically every old show from 6 months or so since we
About
started
that,
doing the
yeah.
video are all up there, and then every single audio podcast is available on iTunes or on
Did you find the two that were missing?
TuneIn.com.
Didn't you have 2 audio ones that were missing?
No, the audio ones aren't missing. We're missing a couple of video ones because we had bad video. And I haven't had time. I mean, I need to like post it with the audio and then throw like a static picture up there or something.
Right.
So we have everything in one place, but I haven't had time to do that. Sorry.
That's all right. Just asking.
Our IT department is underpaid.
I thought there were a couple missing. So,
well,
all right.
I know our first show disappeared.
Yeah.
I still can't figure out, we literally did our first show like the last week of last year. Like it was in December before New Year's,
right.
and we didn't record it. So then we had to go the next week and repeat who the players of the year were and everything like that. So we'll have to do that on. And then we're going to take, not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. Yeah.
Yeah. Election day.
Yeah.
No show on Election day.
Jill wants to go and watch the return somewhere.
Really?
And she's like, I need something to wear. I'm like, well, what do you wear to a funeral?
Yeah. Do you go to like a bar to watch the returns?
Well, she wants to go to like an organized, like political.
And go to Obama's rally.
McCormick Place. Can you imagine if he loses what that place is going to be like? I don't think you'd want to be within 20 miles of it.
No, I wouldn't either.
Let's get off politics.
All right.
I don't want to talk about politics.
All right, which city? Back to which city?
Yeah, I talked to a couple of people about which city. And I was curious because this is the second really big tournament that has come back in the last few years that I had heard about from, people talking about,
Prior,
back in the
right.
day and everything. And I remember talking, I think it was either Tom Curtin or Tom Sawyer. It was probably Tom Sawyer. I was like, why don't you guys bring that tournament back? And he was like, well, we're talking about it. And, the league had some issues that they had to deal with, and they dealt with them. So they had this tournament.
Right.
So literally, it sounded so cool to me. It wasn't actually in Boston. It was, I think, in Nashua, wherever that is.
I have no idea.
So it's across the border.
Okay.
It's the equivalent of a Chicago tournament being held in, like, Pleasant Prairie.
Right.
Well, no, like right over the border.
Yeah.
Right, where it's, like, way, way, way cheaper than it would be if you have something in Chicago.
In the city,
part of the
right.
part of the problem with tournaments in Chicago is everything's so expensive,
Right.
right? So they literally had a hotel to themselves. They sold the thing out.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I saw some pictures. The standards were really nice. They were painted black and everything, so they look good. And I guess they had some new ones and some old ones that they still had from back in the day and stuff. The tournament ran on time.
Well, that's always good.
Hard work and staff that really had they really made an effort to communicate the results to the people that weren't there, and they did everything they could outside of streaming it live. And remind me, we need to talk about streaming a little bit.
All right.
So on Twitter, I was getting tweets about who was in the
Results
final,
and
who was in
everything.
the top 4, and everything, and then they were posting results that had. I don't think they had the entire bracket. I think they had top 32 and up, which.
What was the format?
Of what?
It wasn't long format or anything. It was
No,
just
it was basically your standard,
best of 5. Or
American Diddle Organization tournament. Diddle every leg, best of 3.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
okay.
A lot of Canadians. A lot of Canadians represented themselves very well, and most of them I knew, so that was kind of nice. Congrats, by the way, Jeff. I think Jeff Smith's in the chat room. He had a good weekend. Paul Balduke had a good weekend. Martin Tremblay had a good weekend. So it's, good that they all came. I don't know what happened to the Yanks guys having the Canucks come down beating on you.
Right. It happens.
I didn't go.
That's why. Yes.
No, I literally, there have been tournaments where I did nothing but I beat like 5 Canadians in a row and then lost to an American in top 4.
Yeah.
They were starting to call me the Canadian killer because I killed all these, not killed, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Anyway,
Beat.
results. Why don't we run through some which city results before we forget?
We will start with the mixed doubles, 501 cricket.
Yeah, I assume that's 501 cricket, and then if you win the diddle, you pick what you want in the last leg. 501 cricket choice. I'm assuming that's what it was.
Some names are
Yeah,
have been left off.
yeah, we missed a couple of first names, so sorry about that.
Top 4 goes to Paul and Natalie Boldick, Tom Sawyer and Trish Grezik.
Bolduke.
Bolduc. What did I say? Bolduc?
Yeah.
Bolduc.
Very nice. They're very nice people. They're great players. I've met Paul a few times. He's a good guy.
Yeah. All right. Chris Wallace and Patricia Farrell, second, and Darren Young and Stacy Bromberg win that.
Yeah, congrats to them. By the way, you will notice that I am omitting the MVP results. We have to talk about this MVP thing because I've about had it.
Okay.
Okay. Here's the deal. And this is also,
An MVP from this tournament?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking
like
about?
a tournament MVP, what they will do is they will factor in mixed doubles, mixed triples, doubles, la-di-da-di-da-di-da, which gives a tremendous advantage to anyone who plays with, one of the top women.
Yeah.
Because your odds of winning with, Stacey Bromberg or Marilyn Popp or Paula Murphy or, whatever, any of the top, Trish Grezik, any of the top women, immensely improve your chances.
Sure.
So I played the state championships in Chicago a couple weeks ago. So they had this, this is kind of a long story. So they had this 3-person thing where you had to qualify. Right, so they had a master's player, an intermediate player, and a beginner player, 3-person teams, right, and then everybody had to qualify. Love of my life, Jill, qualified, so she's like, well, then you got to try to play. And I'm like, oh, man, I don't want to do this. So I go to one of these qualifiers, and I'm literally the only person there.
So you won?
No, I didn't win. They said, oh, well, it's canceled. And I'm like, okay, well. So eventually they filled the field by taking people that had lost in like the one where they had a few people because they keep track of points, and I guess you get some for attendance. So I don't know if I got any attendance points for the one I went to that nobody else went to, but so anyway. So I didn't get in this, so they had a 301 singles where I'm playing in the 301 singles, and some of the players were like beginners. And I'm like, oh, man. So I end up winning that. And then I overhear a guy saying, well, hey, that shouldn't count for MVP because, I was playing in this, 3-person thing and I couldn't play in the 301. And I'm like, what is your deal with MVP?
Right.
What is this obsession
is that your goal?
With MVP? So it's kind of like, you have a tremendous advantage winning an MVP, A, if you play in every single event, and B, if you have good partners. Well, I'm sure that there are a handful of people that played really, really, really well, but, don't have the stature or anything to get like a top player as a partner, so they don't have a chance to win this. And there's only so many good women at any tournament that, because the women's field is like, there's like always a few, it's just not as deep as the men's field. I'm not ripping on the women or anything. It's just the way it is. It's not as deep. So why? I just think we should eliminate these MVPs until it's based on something realistic. Like, if it's based on singles and there's 3 singles, then okay, you're MVP because you did better in all the singles. Well, I'm just saying you got to get rid of some of these events that are sort of like silly. A 3-person event or a 4-person event where there's 4 pros against the 4 guys who like play on their team and want to go. What is that?
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, a lot of awards in all sports are kind of goofy anyway. So
but we don't have to support them. See, that's the beauty of this show is we don't have to be a bunch of yucks.
Right.
Espousing a party line because the network says we have to. Right.
Exactly.
For instance.
No.
There's been a lot of talk that pro sports is fixed and la-di-da-di-da-di-da. Okay. In the last 6 weeks, I saw Frank Gore tackle himself.
Right.
And Jim Harbaugh take points off the board that apparently affected the spread.
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
A little bit? Yeah, I don't, and then this ridiculous call with the replacement refs where the Packers.
Right.
Poor guys.
Yeah.
Don't you feel bad for Packers? We should give them a
really.
game. Really? I don't think so.
No. I think they're going to end up just fine.
I'm just saying we don't have to follow anything like this.
Right.
We can kind of tell it like it is and be like, this is a bunch of, garbage.
Yeah.
So MVP awards, I'm thinking, bunch of garbage.
Bunch of garbage.
So we're not going to report MVPs until there's a criteria that makes sense
that we
to
like.
us
Yes.
as an institution.
Right. As
So
your
just 'cause
official darting institution.
That's what we are. So it's not a matter of talking me into it. So you don't have to like sandbag me in the hallway at a tournament telling me about some MVP you won.
Why the MVP should be like this? Yeah.
MVP award should either be based on singles or just forgotten.
Yeah.
You know, I like the sportsmanship award thing, like they gave at the Denver Open. I'm all for stuff like that. If you want to honor people for being, you know, great citizens of darts.
Yeah.
Dartisans? Which reminds me, okay, there's a couple of people waiting on emails from me, and my dart vacation, I didn't answer any. So I will get back to everybody, especially Mr. Walters. I will get back to you, and Todd, I will get back to you, and a couple of other people. I kind of blew everything off.
Well, that's all right.
Anyway, so, yeah. So
I'm sure they'll understand.
But congrats to all the people in the mixed doubles there. Sounds like it was a pretty good event. And then there was a Friday night late draw.
Friday night blind draw. Vi and Ryan Vanderweet, Jim Woodmayer and Perry get top 4. Larry Butler, Chris Dunn, second place. Wayne Woodfelt and Mike Girardi. Girardi?
Garati? I don't know.
Mike Garati.
Must be a local guy.
Win the blind draw.
Congrats to Wayne Woodfelt. He seemed to have a pretty good weekend, especially in the draws. So there are some people that are like blind draw specialists, you know, that seem to do like really good in blind draws. It's just they're comfortable with it, and some people have a hard time with it. Some people have a hard time playing with strangers
right.
Who are differing levels of ability, and then some people just take it right in stride. I was talking, somebody was telling me, like, the guy with the best attitude about blind draws is Toby Simcoe from, no, he's not from Philly, he's from Pennsylvania. Right. But, I mean, he actually looks forward to, like, taking, like, you know, kind of a beginner player and helping him out.
Right.
So somebody must have helped him when he was coming up. And this guy, you know,
so he
for
likes blind draws, right?
Well, it isn't so much, I don't know if he likes him any better than he likes, you know, singles or anything, but you know, a guy that knows him, you know, made a point of telling me the guy's got the best attitude for blind draws I've ever seen, and I think that's worthy of mention.
Yeah.
You know, some people, you know, who'd you play the blind draw with? I don't know. Some guy.
Right.
I mean, if you can't remember the guy's name.
You didn't care.
Yeah, I don't
so
know.
To speak.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's, you know, you're talking about growing a sport, and, you know, people ask me, you know, well, how's darts doing? And I'm like, well, it depends. In some places, it's doing really well. And you look, they're bringing back this tournament in Boston. I think that's an indication, you know, that things are going well, right? You got, how many new events did we have this year? You had the one in Dayton, and the PDC events came back and everything. So I have to consider, I mean, I know it's October, but I'm kind of thinking year-end today for some reason, that, you know, it's been a good year.
Yeah.
You know, but for the sport in general.
The sport in Chicago. It's a different story.
You just got to rain on my parade. You just want to see me just, like, throw up in my mouth a little bit. All right, so who won the draw?
All right. We are...
Mike Garardi. Okay, so men's doubles cricket.
Dave Walsh and Levi Remick, Jim Woodmeyer and Darren Young, top 4. Larry Butler, Ryan Barnett, second place. And Tom Sawyer and Bruce Robbins wins men's doubles cricket.
Okay, congrats to everyone, especially Bruce Robbins, who I don't know. So he must be like a Boston league player. Yeah. So good for him.
A Bostonian.
Yep.
Women's 501 singles, top 4, Callie West and Natalie Bolduc.
I think it's Bolduc.
Bolduc. Yeah. I'm going to mispronounce
it. There's more of them coming, so let's settle on Bolduc.
Bolduc. Right. Second place, Patricia Farrell and Stacy Bromberg wins 501 singles. Men's 501 singles. Top 4, Wayne Woodfelt and P. Howell. Second place, Ryan Barnett. And first place goes to Martin Tremblay.
Okay, congrats to all of them.
Women's doubles cricket, top 4, Marilyn Pop, Marcia Loesch, Locke, Betty Cunningham, and Penny Walls. Second place goes to Stacy Bromberg and Trish Grezik. And Callie West and Robin Curry win women's doubles cricket.
Okay, congrats to all of them, especially Marcia Locke. She's my Cityville buddy.
Is she?
So she gets a special shout-out. If you play Cityville, you get a special shout-out from the show.
Mixed triples, 601. Top 4, Darren Young, Jim Woodmayer, Stacy Bromberg, and Bolduc, Tremblay, and Jeff. For that,
I'm assuming that's Natalie Bolduc, Martin Tremblay, and somebody whose last name is Jeff.
Or his first name is Jeff.
Well, no, because they're all last names. So Yeah.
Second place goes to Jeff Smith, Kelly West, and Chris Wallace, with Tom Sawyer, Tom Curtin, and Trish Gressick winning the mixed triples.
Okay, congrats to them.
Saturday, they had a blind draw. Top 4 goes to Roy Dentremont, Levi Remick, and Michaud.
Okay, yeah, French-Canadian.
All right. Second place goes to Paul Bolduc and Connor. And first place goes to Tim O'Gorman and Wayne Woodfelt.
Okay.
Another blind draw win for Woodfelt, huh?
Well, yeah, and I think that's nice because I believe he's from that town. He's from, like, Nashua, New Hampshire, I think is right on the border and not far from Boston.
From Boston.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's a local guy, so that's good.
All right. Men's doubles 501. Larry Butler and Ryan Barnett and Tim O'Gorman and Aiello.
I don't think it's Danny Aiello, but
they get top 4 with Martin Tremblay and Paul Bolduc getting second, with first place going to Jeff Smith and Chris Wallace.
okay, congrats to them.
Women's singles cricket, top 4, Carolyn Mars and Callie West. Marilyn Pop gets second, and Stacy Bromberg wins that event.
Yeah, Carolyn Mars, I've actually met her. She used to travel.
Yeah.
And
Is she from this area?
No, she's from Boston. Yeah. She's from Boston, I think. And man, I wish she would travel more. She was actually the first person that gave me a tip on hitting doubles. Like, we played one of those like pro-am things where she ended up being our pro, and I left one hanging on the. I think I had 36 left,
wire.
so I left one, outside dead center, kind of hanging. And I kind of like ducked and moved, and then missed, right? And then after, she's like, there was plenty of room there. Just throw it.
Yeah.
Just throw another one in there. It'll go in. And I'm like, thought she was insane at the time, but now I realize, she was actually correct.
Yeah.
So sorry about that, Carolyn, but congrats on playing well. Singles cricket.
And then men's singles cricket, top 4, Jeff Smith, Paul Bolduc. Larry Butler gets second, and Darren Young wins that.
Okay, congrats to them.
Women's doubles 501, top 4, Stacy Bromberg, Trish Gressick, Camilla Bunnell, and Hannah.
Hannah McCandlin. I hope I got that right because they had an abbreviation and it said like McKendall something. Hannah McCandlin is one of the juniors, one of the Utes that played. And I think that was her. If it's not, my apologies.
Second place, Andrea Taylor and Nicole Watson, and first place, Kelly West and Robin Curry.
Yeah, and I think, Nicole Watson should get a special shout-out because she was actually running the tournament and kind of ran off to play an event and ended up, making a final, which I think is outstanding.
Yeah.
Nicole's a good player, and I know she's been involved in running the leagues down there, but I don't think too many people realize how hard it is to try to run a tournament and then go run and play. That can't be easy. So special shout-out to Nicole.
We have some Saturday youth results.
Right. This is luck of the draw.
Luck of the draw. Second place, Alan Feltbush and Jacob Demers. First place, Joshua Demers and Amanda Pasco.
Ooh, brother battle.
Youth singles 14 and over. Second place, Hannah McCandlin and Miles Gallagher wins that one.
Okay, congrats to them.
Under 14, Jordan Tompkins second, and Joshua Demers takes first.
Okay.
And what is this?
That's more. I think that's the adult youth.
Oh, okay. Adult youth doubles 13 and over. Top 4: Mark and Mark Timpey, Dan Munson and Todd Baumgardner. Sorry about that. Second place goes to Paul Costellas and Tom Sawyer. First place, Miles Gallagher and Joe Efter.
Okay, congrats to them. Some people I haven't seen in a while. I haven't seen Joe Efter since the last time I was in Maine. So it's good to see he's still playing.
Adult youth doubles under 12. Top 4, Alec Pasco and Matt Smith, Josh Demers and Cabby.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
Second place, Jacob Demers and Levi Remick, and first place, Duke McLean and Larry Butler.
Okay, congrats to all the participants.
A lot of events.
Yeah, it's a lot of events. If you guys want full results, they're on the right-hand side of the mmdl.org page. And I think they're only listing like top 32, but they do have the brackets,
Yeah.
so you can kind of see who everybody played and all that stuff. That's kind of nice.
Right.
That's a good way.
See their path to the road to the championship.
Yeah, it's a good way to kind of see, who had it rough, who didn't have it rough, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of a good way to look at a tournament. I like that. Okay, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Brought to you by the Dart Zone.
Stay in the zone.
TheDartZone.com is an official Cosmo distributor. We spent the last minute looking through the chat. You guys are
kind
funny.
of humorous.
Well, I should apologize. I mean, at the beginning of the show, there was this odd noise that I was hearing, and it didn't start literally until about 10 minutes before the show was supposed to start, and it just sort of put me in like the wrong frame of mind
Right.
or something. So, I'm over there talking about politics and football and stuff. So sorry if I offended anybody.
It's all part of the disclaimer.
Yeah. So, where were we?
All right. Well, you want to start talking about some cricket?
Oh, no, let's talk about how I don't get enough respect. No, yeah, where do you want to start?
Explain what hypermodern cricket to me is.
Okay. Did you ever
Is
play
that the correct way of saying it?
hypermodern? Yeah, it's one word. Hypermodern.
Hypermodern.
Right. Hypermodern.
Okay.
All right, let's set the how much time do we got?
At least 15 good minutes.
According to that, it's only 12, but all right. Did you ever play chess?
Yeah.
How much chess did you play?
A decent amount when I was
So, like,
younger.
you-
I haven't played in a while.
But you know, like, how the
I know how to
pieces
play,
move and
yeah.
everything. Okay.
I wasn't bad at it. I just never got into it, though.
No, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, when
But I
was
know how to play the game.
Okay, when I was a kid, there was like a chess craze in America. It got to the point where in math class, if we wanted to play chess instead of doing algebra, we could do that. So that's what I did. And it was actually the first tournaments I ever played were 7th and 8th grade. We had like a 7th grade tournament and an 8th grade tournament.
For chess.
Yeah. And there was a kid whose father was from Russia. He beat everybody in my grade. And then the guy who was second was the guy who lived across the street from him, and they played together all the time. And then me and this one kid, he beat me, so I was fourth in 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, it was the same thing, except I beat him, and I finished third. So between that and debate contests, those are the first tournaments I played. But it was a big chess craze in America back then.
Okay.
So I read up on chess from an early age. How old's a 7th grader? Whatever the normal age is, take off a year. Because I was like
13? 12.
11.
11, so you're 11.
Yeah, so when I was 11 and 12,
Yeah.
I played a lot of chess. And I read up on stuff because it was like the Fisher-Spassky chess craze.
Okay.
Right? So I was a geek, whatever.
I think you're on fire over there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so I learned a lot about chess.
Yes.
And then, I played it in college. until
Which this has what to do with darts.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Try to
So there
find
was a
out.
guy. So we're sitting in the cafeteria, and some guy was playing chess, and I'm like, "Hey, you want to play a game?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." And I like killed a guy, and then halfway through the game, there's this redhead math major that I'd kind of seen around the library, and he's just kind of watching the game, and the guy's like, "Well, I got to go," and I'm like, "Well, whose set is this?" And then the redhead guy's like, "Well, you want to play a game?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. You know how to play?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I can play." I'm like, okay. So, I set up the pieces, and he's like, I'll tell you what, I won't even look. And he turned his back to the board, right? And there's notation you use in chess. So,
Yeah.
like
Right.
pawn to king 4 or e4 or whatever. So, I'm like, okay, well, here's my move. And he's immediately like, boom, 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 boom. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to mess with this guy, make a really complicated position. So I played an opening I hate, which is like, Queen's Gambit declined, where you make like 15, 20 moves and you don't exchange any pieces, so the board gets crowded. And we get to a point and he stops. And I'm sitting there because there's only one move he can make, and every other move is going to mess with him. And he took like 5 minutes, and finally he's like, E4. And I'm just like, damn. So he crushed me, which was a lesson. So I talked to him after. I'm like, okay, what's the deal here? I'm like, there's no way on earth that you memorized, this opening, because I played like kind of an unknown variation, right? And he's like, well, yeah, I don't play openings anymore. He's like, what I do is I play positions. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, what I do is I memorize certain positions on the board. So I don't really care what happens to get to that position. All I know is once I get to this position, I can go from there.
Okay.
So it was a completely different approach from the way people used to play chess. It used to be you would just memorize openings, and then you would start memorizing the more common variations and stuff like that. And it was in big league chess, when they would like have a break, you'd have like 8 guys helping you analyze, whatever. So this seemed to me to be a much simpler approach to playing chess, especially if you can't spend every waking minute.
Right. Memorizing.
Speaking of waking minutes, tell me about this dream you had.
Nice way to get off the subject. I just had a
Well,
dream.
no,
I had
but-
a dream about Dart Talk where we were doing the show.
Now, that's great. Okay, so
We were doing the show, and you were just in zombie land and just had no interest in it whatsoever. And you were just staring there like you didn't want to be there. And I kept asking questions for like a half hour, and you didn't want to answer the questions. And you were just miserable to be there. And we were taking people in from the chat, and it didn't matter. And then finally I just said, well, this show is just riveting. And I got a laugh out of you, and everything was fine. So, I don't know.
So that's an anxiety dream.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, you're now officially a co-host, man.
Okay.
If you're going to worry about this show, then you're in.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, so anyway, the idea was that there's more than one way to look at a game.
Right.
So it was a revelation. And this is like when I was in school. This is when I was in college. And then I forgot about it until I moved to Los Angeles, and I didn't know anybody, right? And there was a Russian restaurant that had like one of LA's first microbreweries. I didn't really drink then, but they had great dinner. So I'd go there after work, and there'd be like a table of like 8 guys, so 4 matches going, and they're playing speed chess, which I'd never played before.
Yeah.
Absolutely just thought it was phenomenal. So, I was playing a lot of chess, and then I made friends with this one Russian dude, right? Because apparently all they do in Russia, they don't play darts, they play chess,
Chess
right?
and drink vodka.
And we were kind of goofing around, and he's like, why do you play that way? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you play such boring chess. And I'm like, what do you mean boring? And he's like, well, did you ever hear of Nimzovich? And I'm like, well, no. And he's like, well, you should get a book on Nimzovich, and here's why. So he started playing this game that was just so radically crazy, where moves, some of the moves look stupid.
Yeah.
Like, one of the basic rules is you never put your knight on the edge of the board.
Okay.
Because it can only
Right.
cover half.
Yeah.
So half of its movement is wasted. But Nimzovich would do that and then, bring it back later at the right time and stuff like that. And he's like, well, the reason you do this is blah, 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 blah. And he just went on and on and on. I couldn't follow it. So finally I'm like, heck with it. And I got a book on Nimzovich. Nimzovich played hypermodern chess. Now, how long did that take to get to
That's
hypermodern?
a long time.
Right. Okay.
Yes. I was about to ask you another question, what this had to do with
We took
hypermodern darts.
We took the long way around the barn.
But I get where you're going with
You get
this.
where I'm going with
Yeah.
this. Okay, so now Tony Payne wrote all these, great articles about cricket back in the 80s.
Right.
And you got to understand that cricket back in the 80s was relatively new. And from what I understand, talking to people like, John Kramer and Rich Baldwin and some of the guys that played back then, they refer to it as a gentleman's game, where as soon as you got a point ahead, you just try to close everything.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't get in these like insane point wars that you see sometimes.
No,
Guys with,
right.
8, 9, 1,000 points apiece, stuff like that.
1,000.
1,000, 1,000. It's less than 11.
I know.
1,100. Right.
You the type that says 2010 and 2012 as well? Or do you say 2000?
I try not to. It just seemed like it would fit in the flow and people
okay.
would understand it. I mean, semantically, it was incorrect. But and this is a good point you're making, because it's hypermodern chess has a lot in common with jazz. And you try to explain what jazz is to somebody because it sounds like noise to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? And when I first started looking at jazz, and I talked to a jazz guy, because the famous quote about jazz is, if you have to ask what it is, you'll never know, right?
Okay.
Which, that strikes me as being totally arrogant. Because I come from the Kurt Vonnegut school, which says if you can't explain what you're doing to a 5-year-old, you're a fraud.
Okay.
Right? But the idea behind jazz is you're not allowed to break any rule. You can break any rule you want as long as you know what the rule is.
All right.
Okay?
Sure.
From a musical standpoint, hypermodern chess is much the same way.
Right.
Where you can do things that are kind of against the book, but you have to understand the book first,
right.
because you can't just, break it for no reason at all. Right? Same way you're at a stop sign, right? And it's like midnight, and you're in the middle of nowhere, and there are no police. Of course you can go through the stop sign, but you can't go through stop signs, anytime you want. You're going to end up hitting something, right? So I started reading all these articles on thermonuclear cricket a couple of years ago. And being the kind of guy I am, I took issue with this and that and this and that. But, for the most part, it's kind of like, okay, well, this makes sense. But I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. And the more I read it, the more I realized that the problem with thermonuclear cricket and the problem with talking cricket to people in general is that people don't understand. They understand it like kind of on a subconscious level, but
what would
not on a
thermonuclear cricket be?
Well, I mean, I didn't read issue number 1 where he defined thermonuclear cricket, but it has concepts like, don't throw to close number.
Oh, okay.
Right, stuff like that.
Right.
So it from the gentleman's game where you just kind of like got ahead and then went around the board and closed, it was a whole leap of like, hey, you don't have to play it this way, you can play it this way, that way, and
right.
But the problem that I found with it is that it never really. Here's the deal with cricket, because I try to explain stuff to people, right? Especially when
It usually takes a while.
people ask you, like somebody's like, well, Steve, how come you pointed me there and you didn't close? And I'm like, well, and I'll explain to them why I didn't do it. And they'll be like, well, no, last time we played, you said something else. And I'm like, well, that's because the context, when I end up with these long
The
answers.
situation was different.
Right. So the idea here is that what we will do is we will explain what the concepts are, and we will explain what the fundamentals are, and we will give people the background to make informed decisions, because that's kind of the problem.
To break the rules.
Not so much to break them, but the idea here is that if you try to argue cricket with somebody like DJ Sayre, right? Or I'm not picking on DJ, but almost anybody will be like, well, what if I throw this? And then you throw this, and I throw this, and I throw this, and I throw this. That's the equivalent of like a chess position where you're just going off on one variation.
Yeah.
I don't find that very informative because when push comes to shove and you're playing cricket, you need to make a decision on what to throw at. Do you point? Do you close? Do you go ahead? Do you go to this number? Do you go to that number? I mean, they're relatively straightforward decisions, and yet I've won so many cricket games by doing stuff that left people scratching their heads.
Yeah.
And then they don't understand why I do it.
But you have a reason.
Well, of course I have a reason.
Yeah.
But because I play hypermodern cricket, because I follow a decision tree that is much more all-encompassing than what normal people do. Right?
Okay.
Like, I'll give you an example. And I didn't have time to do the graphic. Let's say you and I are playing cricket. This is like, okay, hypermodern cricket example 1. Okay?
Write that down.
All right, let's quick commercial and
we'll come
back because we owe one more plug. So, okay, we'll be back in like 30 seconds. Okay, we're back for the fourth quarter, brought to you by the Dart Zone.
Stay in the zone.
TheDartZone.com is an official Cosmo distributor. We have to apologize. We have an air conditioner in here, and for some reason there was smoke coming in from the outside. I think there was like a delivery truck or something, like with its engine running outside.
Yeah.
So it was coming in through the
exhaust fumes.
Truck exhaust coming through the air conditioner.
Yeah.
So sorry about the smoke and the screen. Okay, where were we?
All right. Just point number 1.
Example 1.
Example 1.
Okay, and this is
hypermodern cricket.
Right. And this will give everybody an idea of kind of where we're coming from here. Yeah, there are, I wrote them down, but I didn't bring it with me. I think there's 5 major concepts everyone's going to have to learn. But here's an example. Let's say you and I are playing cricket. Yeah. Okay, you want to go first or second?
I want to go first.
Okay, let's say that you open up with 3 20s.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in thermonuclear cricket, what you would do is you would go for the 19s.
Right.
Because the theory there is that if you throw a triple on your third dart at the 20s, or if you're, as some people say, chasing, which I think is like totally the wrong word to use for that, although
chasing by meaning that the person going second starts
closing what the other guy closed. Yeah. Right. Yeah. If you're going to keep doing that, I could see why you call it chasing. But in thermonuclear cricket, you would go 19s there.
Yeah.
And the only question would be how many in thermonuclear cricket, you would throw 3 at the 19 because you're going to get the full value of every dart.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other guy's going to do what?
Most likely point on 20s.
Yeah, or he could go to 18s, or he could try to close. Kind of depends on how many 19s you hit.
Yeah, sure.
I don't agree with this at all as a philosophy or as a strategy.
Which part? The second player thrown at the 19s?
Yeah,
okay.
I don't agree with that at all. So let me try to explain to you one of the concepts that is way. I'll explain it, and you tell me what you think of it.
All right.
Okay. This will especially, I think, be clear to soft tippers. okay, because they get, if you play soft tip cricket at the end of your leg, you get a marks per round average. It'll calculate it, right?
Right.
Okay. A marks per round average on a soft tip machine, I believe it cuts off at some point. Like it'll only count the first 12 darts or something. So they don't factor in the bull or, whatever algorithm they have. And I've had this discussion, I don't know if it was who it was with, it's probably with DJ Zaire, but, where he brought up the fact that, well, let's suppose that both of our averages are 5.0. Like we both average 5 marks around.
Yeah.
Which is a reasonable assumption, except I'm like, well, I don't look at it that way. And I've never looked at it that way. Like, the way I look at it is it's like, yeah, well, you could average 5 around, but what's your average on 20s?
Okay.
And what's your average on 18s and 17s and 15s? Because what you'll find, especially among, as you go further down with amateurs and mid-level amateurs and, stuff like that, is you will find that most players are much stronger on one number than another.
True.
And even with the top-level professionals, I think if you ask anybody, like Bob Seneve or Jeff Smith, ask anybody what their best number is, and they'll say trip 20.
Well, that makes sense.
Well, yeah, they throw it all the time. They play it in 501 and whatnot.
Both.
So it has to be their best number, right? And their second best number, a pro's second best number, or best number, if it's not the 20, will be the 19.
Right.
Because apparently it's old school to score on 19s. I wasn't at that school, but that's what I'm told. Okay, now, follow me here.
I'm trying.
Because I'm going to try to say this simply. If you're a 5.0,
yeah,
odds are your average on the 20 is going to be more than 5.
Right.
Right? Say it's a 7. Okay? If you can throw 7 counts on the 20s, what do I need to throw on the 19s to get even or to pass you? I need 9 counts because you're not going to throw an 8 count.
Right.
Right? If all we do is trade 7 counts, I'm a goner. So what I try to explain to somebody is like, look, if you think of any cricket game you've ever played and you play it back in your head and you went second, because the strategy for going first is pretty straightforward. Well, when you go second and you have to throw better than the other guy, you have to look for your ideal opportunity to close the 20. This is like a basic concept here.
Right.
So it may very well be that if a guy opens up with 3 20s and no points, that will be your best chance to close the 20s.
That makes sense to me.
So if you go for the 19s and you throw 3 or 4, what have you gotten out of it?
Right.
Now, there's a counter-argument to this. The counter-argument to this is like, well, if you close the 20s, what you're doing is you're shortening the game.
Right.
Right? And you're still going second. You started the game down 3 darts, and you're still down 3 darts. And to that I say, possibly. But you can always lengthen a cricket game. What you're doing is what was the one game? I forget. There was a video game where everybody had all these weapons, and you had to get rid of the one. It was like some kung fu game or something where you would, depending on who you would fight, they would have like their master weapon and then their secondary weapon, and as long as you got the master weapon from you'd have a fighting chance. It's kind of like that. So I won't say who I played, but I remember playing a guy in a cricket tournament where we're playing alternate starts. So right away I'm down on the 19s, and he's just like, he doesn't seem to care about anything but pounding 20s. So finally I'm down like 100 points. And I had just, I think I threw 4 18s, so now I'm down 82 points or whatever it was. And I'm like, heck with it. And I just, boom, close 20. End up winning the leg. Yeah. 2 legs later, he's going first again. Here come raining ton 40s on me, and I'm like, you know what? You're going to have to beat me on a different number. And I closed 20s, end up winning the leg.
Yeah.
Part of the reason that I won that was he was shocked that I did that.
Right.
That I closed the 20s from behind. But it reinforced in my mind the concept that, because you can't win the game without closing the other guy's number, What you really need to do is find out when is the best time to close it.
Right.
The idea somehow that I'm just going to outthrow you and I'm just going to throw more triples than you and eventually I'm going to be able to go fat and beat you doesn't really work.
Especially the better the competition.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just very seldom are you going to outthrow anybody by that much. When you're going second, if you get one dart to close and you don't take it,
Yeah.
right? Now, I'm not talking about a hero dart, which is, something else we'll talk about. But one of the concepts that we use in hypermodern cricket is a more enlarged worldview when it comes to cricket, right?
Sure.
Where it's just not a matter of I'm just going to, throw 19s till I get ahead and then close the 20s. The idea here is you're going to make your decisions based on certain principles, and you are going to prioritize what you shoot at based on these principles.
So you can't just assume since you're going second, if the guy hits closes 20s that you're going 19s. You have to weigh the option of whether he hit 3, 6, or 9.
Well, if somebody hits 5 or more, it's sort of silly to go for the 20s unless you're desperate.
Right, but so that all depends on what he hits. And
yeah. Of course it does. I mean, if somebody opens up with a ton 80,
you're not closing 20s.
The horse has left the barn.
Right.
Okay, you're 6 darts behind before you even get to the line.
Yeah.
Right. So
Good
you
luck.
got a lot of catching up
Good
to do.
luck.
Well,
Right.
I don't think anybody should quit a cricket game.
Quit a
I don't think anybody should quit a cricket game. But I mean, when you're down, you're down.
Yes.
I mean, there's no sense deluding yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? But anyway, what I'm getting at here is that part of the way you make decisions is by prioritizing. And one of the highest priorities and one of the main principles of hypermodern cricket is you seize the high ground, which means that if you're much more motivated to close if a guy has a number ahead of you. Right? Simple math. If you throw a fat 20, I need 2 19s to beat it.
Yeah.
Right? If you throw a trip 20, I need 4 19s to beat it. That's bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Right.
Right? So you have to close when you go second and when you're behind. The question is when.
Okay.
Right? Now, how do you decide when to close is...
That's kind of what I was getting at. So
right. And there's also, okay. See, there's another point I need to introduce here, but I want to make sure that we're clear on what we've covered so far.
About
we've talked
automatically
about
going for 19s with...
Well, we've talked about 2 principles based on this one example where your opponent throws 3 20s.
Yeah.
One of the principles is that you have to seize the high ground.
Right.
Right? Well, another subset of that is when.
Right.
Okay. The other thing that we're talking about is how to prioritize. And you see this mistake, especially, I see it all the time with amateurs who, like, they'll try to close a number and they'll miss, and then they'll try to close a number and they'll hit 1, and then they'll go and point. And I'll ask them, why did you do that? And they'll be like, well,
Last start points.
However, that's erroneous thinking. If your priority is to close and you've wasted 2 darts already to close, then you should be throwing the 3rd one to close.
Okay.
Otherwise, the whole turn's a waste of time. Okay. If you throw a triple or whatever, it's still less than a triple to exceed it. So you're not really picking anything up. The 2 darts you've thrown are wasted.
That you're getting your opponent to waste some darts to retake the lead by throwing last dart points, right?
Well, look at it this way. I mean, if you're going to throw a single, where is it really going to help you? And we're talking about amateurs here.
Yeah.
Right? Aren't you better off with a 2 count where you're guaranteed to close it on the next turn, or you're going to throw one for points on a lower number where all they need is a fat one to make up for that dart? So now you're further behind, and they got 2 darts to do whatever they want with.
Yeah. Well, I can see it. I'm just saying that's part of...
Yeah.
That's from
it's a little
darters
abstract.
I've seen. A lot of the concept is you're making them waste a dart.
Right.
And then, as from an amateur standpoint, they don't necessarily always hit that fat.
But you're not making them waste a dart. Who's to say they wouldn't point you anyway? That's why
That's
next
true.
week
Okay.
we'll get like some concrete examples that we could throw up on the screen so people
Right.
can kind of see what we're talking about. But we're talking general principles here. And I was going to introduce the third one. Oh God, what was it now? What did I just say about the wasting a dart and everything and going back? Oh, we were talking about prioritizing
Yeah.
and then right.
If your priority is to close, and then,
if your
then
priority
close,
is to close, then close.
don't throw away a dart on a different number. Right. You're changing your priority in the middle of your throw.
What you're basically doing is you can't make up your mind.
Yeah.
And so by your indecision, you're saying, well, I'll just go like 2 and 1. I'll throw 2 here and 1 here, 2 here and 1 here, 2 here and 1 here. And you're not accomplishing anything. All you're doing is treading water.
So what you're saying is instead of walking up to the board and saying, all right, I'm going to throw at the 18s, and if I don't close them, I'm throwing at the 20s, that would be their priority. You're saying the priority should be you're instead of the priority of saying if I don't close them, you're saying the priority should be you're going up there to close them.
If your priority is to close, then you close.
Right.
And you don't worry about pointing. If your priority is to point, then you point and you don't worry about it.
But you don't have the both thoughts in your head at the same time.
Well, that's not I wouldn't say that. A lot of times when I play doubles with certain guys who don't see cricket the way I do, I will ask them a question that invariably makes their jaw drop to the floor and distracts them for the rest of the leg. So I don't really ask this question anymore. But I will say, how many darts do I have to close?
How many darts?
I'll ask my partner, how many darts do I have to close? Now, maybe I should phrase it differently. Like, how many darts am I allowed to use to close or something? Because the way they look at it, if they're saying, well, you only get 1 dart to close, and then you're supposed to point with the other 2, what's your priority? If you've got 2 darts to point with and 1 to close, isn't your priority to point?
Yes.
Then you don't close first. You point first.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's sort of, and then, if for some reason, your first dart misses, you're not going to worry about closing or whatever. You see how you make that decision, though?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're talking about is, bringing in things like priorities to determine what you're throwing at rather than the way some people kind of look at it. I'm going to go 2 and 1, 2 and 1. Why? Why are you going 2 and 1? Because you're up, because you're down? I mean, so
okay.
One of the principles that, man, I'm very irritated with myself right now. one of the principles that we're going to talk about is how to prioritize.
Right.
And so we'll put specific examples up there, and we'll say, here's why you want to do it this way, and you want to go here first, right? As opposed to how some people do it. And then
if you want to follow the hypermodern cricket.
Well, if you want to win.
Okay.
Hypermodern cricket always wins.
All right.
It always
as long
wins
as you hit it.
against. Well, okay, look. If your strategy is like, well, I'm going to throw triples until you cry and I'm not going to miss, that's a really good strategy.
Yes.
I don't know what you would call it because that's the strategy Darren used on me in Nashville, and it worked out really good.
Right.
I'm going to win the diddle and then just throw triples.
Until you cry.
That's hard to beat. To my credit, I didn't cry.
Right.
I threw a couple of triples in there too and kind of slowed them down. But in the end, when you're going second, if the other guy doesn't miss, you lose.
Yeah, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, good game. I mean,
right.
Let's. Everybody likes to talk about strategy. Everybody says cricket's great because there's strategy and everything. Yeah, There is a strategic element to cricket, but if you can't hit what you're aiming at,
you're not going to win.
No strategy is going to help you except, the ones where we say practice.
Yes.
And, those kinds of things.
Right.
I mean, there's no... However, if you're playing someone of equal ability to you and you follow the principles of hypermodern cricket and they don't, you'll beat them 19 times out of 20.
Okay.
All other things being equal. I mean, if you're throwing the same amount of triples as they are.
Right.
But they don't play this way, and they play the thermonuclear way, or they play some other way, and you follow the principles that we set forth in this, you almost can't lose.
All things being equal, right?
All things being equal, because the totality of the theory, if you follow all the principles, and we've talked about 2
Out
so
of
far tonight.
5.
Yeah.
Ish.
So what are the 2? Just to reiterate.
What are the prioritize?
And seize the high ground.
Seize the high ground.
Seize the high ground.
Right.
And prioritize. So those are the 2 we'll talk about, and then we'll do the next 3 next week because we're running out of time.
All right.
But you see
Well,
kind of
we
where I'm
yeah.
getting at this? Because the prioritizing...
We've got a taste.
You've got a little bit of a taste of where we're coming from. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, prioritizing, you get to do a lot of fun stuff.
Right.
When you prioritize, if you do it effectively, and you can really mess people up. So we'll talk about...
What's it like to play somebody else that plays hypermodern cricket?
The only people that I've ever seen that play hypermodern cricket do it intuitively, but don't realize they're doing it. So, and I guarantee you there isn't one player in America that has not fallen victim to this. It works. You have no idea how good this stuff works.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a couple of people that I can think of that they do it accidentally, kind of. They don't do it on purpose, but they have like an intuitive feel for things, and I won't say who they are, but
Right.
But we'll talk about it next week.
All right.
You got anything?
Donate to Toys for Tots, Johnny K's Toys for Tots.
I am going to repost the link. I have no idea where we are with donations. I'll post the link again. You guys, let's get Steve his $5,000 haircut and raise some money for the kids. Get some toys for the kids. I will repost Johnny K's link and try to get a hold of him.
Okay.
And
Sounds
see
good.
exactly
Hopefully we'll have an update for you next
where
week.
we are. Yeah. Good luck to everybody
We
going
need
to
to
Myrtle.
get an update by next week because then we're taking the next week off.
That's right. No show on Election Day.
Right.
So
November 6th, I believe, right?
Is that what it is? The 6th?
31st is
It's the
a
first
Wednesday.
Tuesday in November. I don't know.
So, no, it's actually like the...
Whatever.
Yeah,
I think it's the 4th.
4th. Maybe it's the 4th. Anyway, first election day. Let's just go with that.
Anyway, yeah, there's early voting in nearly every state in the Continental 48, so I don't care who you vote for, but go out and vote. And the harder they make it, the more important it is that you do it.
Right.
Okay? We'll leave on that note.
All right.
Steve Penuncielman for Mystery Mark. Thanks to the Dart Zone, Redwood Darts, and Windy City Fabricators.
Yes.
We'll Dart talk to you next week.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody take care.
Thanks for listening.